11.7, factoring ax squared plus bx plus c. These are our day 2 notes of 11.7. Now, today we're going to practice where a is equal to 1, a is equal to prime, or a is equal to numbers that are not prime. So we may have a little more guess and check with these. Our first problem is 4x squared minus 4x minus 15. Okay, so when we start this problem, once again, if you look at your little graphic organizer, you always check for GCF first. So looking through my numbers here, there is no number that goes into both 4 and 15 evenly, and there's only 2 x's, 1 x, and no x's. So we do not have a GCF for this problem. So our next step is like our guess and check when a was prime. But when a is not prime, we have to list off all of the factors that we have for this a term. So we could have 1 and 4, 2 and 2, and those are all possibilities for 4. Then we list off our factors of our c term, 1 and 15, 3 and 5, and those are all the factors that we have for 15. So we're going to use our guess and check method, starting with our brackets for our 2 factors. But notice this time we've got multiple options for our first term there and multiple options for our c term. So I am going to put my pen away, and I'm going to grab my pencil. Also, a helpful tool for this is using a whiteboard. Okay, so going on for factoring this, guessing and checking, I'm going to start with my smaller numbers first, but you can start with whatever numbers that you want to start with. So the first one I'm going to put in is 2 and 2 for my 4x squared. So 2x and 2x would multiply back to 4x squared. And then I'm going to place my 3 and my 5 in the other terms. And I'm going to guess and check. Now this sign being negative, I know that these signs are different, but I don't know what my signs would need to be. So when I check my terms here, 2x times 5, I get 10x, and 3 times 2x, I get 6x. Well, these middle terms are very close to this negative 4. Since my term is negative, that means my larger factor must be negative. So here, negative 10 plus 6x will give me my negative 4x. So I'm going to place my signs. This negative would be with the 5. And since this one is positive, that means my 3 was positive. And now I'm going to check the whole thing. 2x times 2x gives me 4x squared. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. 3 times 2x is positive 6x. And if I add these together, positive 6 and negative 10, I get negative 4x. And my last check is 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. All right, so we got the correct factors on the first try, but sometimes it doesn't always happen that way. But make sure you always check off that it multiplies back to the original trinomial. So my answer is 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 5. Okay, number 2. 10x squared plus 19x plus 6. First, I'm going to check for GCF. None of these terms have a number in common, nor do they have variables in common, so I do not have a GCF. The next step, I'm going to list off my factors for my number 10. I've got 1 times 10, 2 times 5, and those are all my factors. Listing off my factors for 6, 1 times 6, 2 times 3, those are all my factors for 6. So I've got all these possibilities for my factors. Next thing I'm going to notice is that this multiplies to a positive number. If this multiplies to a positive number, that means the factor signs will be the same. Since it also adds to a positive number, I know both of my factors are positive. So I can go ahead and solidify my signs. All right, my next step, I'm going to grab my pencil and I'm going to use my guess and check method. So first, I'm going to start with my smaller numbers again with 2 and 5. So I'm going to start with 2x and 5x to get my 10x squared. And then I'm going to start with my small numbers here too with 2 and 3. So I'm going to place in here 2 and 3. Next, I'm going to check my work. 2x times 5x gives me 10x squared. 2x times 3 gives me 6x. 2 times 5x gives me 10x. And if I look at these middle terms here, 10 plus 6, since I know these have to both be positive, they are not adding to 19. So I'm going to erase, and I'm going to guess and check again. Now I use 2 and 3, but they can multiply to different numbers in different positions. So this time I'm going to use 2 and 3 again, but this time I'm going to put 3 here and 2 over here. Now if I multiply these out, I've got 2x times 2 gives me 4x, and 3 times 5x gives me 15x. 15x and 4x add this time to my 19x. And then last I've got 3 times 2 to give me positive 6. So I have now checked off that this two binomials multiply back to my trinomial. My answer is 2x plus 3 times 5x plus 2. Don't forget that these factors can be flip-flopped. If you have 5x plus 2 and then 2x plus 3, that is also correct. The rules of multiplication commutative property still hold true. All right, number 3. 9x squared minus 24x plus 12. Hopefully you noticed when we wrote this problem down that we have a GCF in this problem. Looking at our numbers 9, 24, and 12, 3 goes into all of these evenly. So I'm going to factor out a 3, and I'm left with 3x squared minus 8x plus 4. Now this problem becomes a little more manageable because these numbers, this is a prime number, and this has less options than 12 did. So factoring out that GCF first helped us out. All right, I'm going to start factoring this. I've got a 3 here, so I've got 1 times 3, and that's my only option because 3 is prime. And with my 4, I've got 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. So I'm going to write down first my GCF of 3. 1 and 3 are my only options here, so I'm going to put x and 3x. And then if I look at the signs, I'm multiplying to something positive and adding to negative. So I definitely know my two middle terms are negative factors. Now I'm going to move over to my pencil because now I don't know what they could be and I have to guess and check. So I have 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. Doesn't matter which one you start with, I'm going to start with my smaller numbers. So if I plug in 2 and 2, I'm going to check this with multiplication. X times 3x is 3x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6x. And negative 6 and negative 2 add to my negative 8. And negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So this one has checked off to be correct. So I'm going to write my final answer as 3 times x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. And this one is fully factored. Notice if you would have forgotten to take out your GCF in the beginning, just like yesterday's lesson, we would have had to factor it out at the end out of one of our factors. So always factoring GCF first helps us out because if we don't factor it out in the beginning, we have to factor it out in the end because the instructions say to factor completely. All right, number 4. Problem is 8x cubed minus 14x squared plus 6x. Pause the video and try factoring this one out. Don't forget, check for GCF. Okay, hopefully you've gotten a chance to factor this out. The first thing that I noticed is that 8, 14, and 6 had a common number of 2.